The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent. Every species, from the small insect-like Dren to the massive stone-skinned Gorath, turned their eyes to the central platform. High Lord Makros of the Valori Dominion stood tall, his purple skin glowing under the lights. His 4 eyes scanned the room with cold pride. "Today," Makros said, his voice echoing through the chamber. Whispers spread through the hall. The humans. That young species, from the small blue planet. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were weak. They were soft. They made music about love and painted pictures of flowers. Makros raised his hand, and the whispers died. The humans have crossed into our border systems. They have ignored our warnings. They have shown disrespect to the Valori Dominion. He paused, letting his words sink in. We have conquered 47 species. We have ruled 300 star systems for 10,000 years. These humans are nothing. He pressed a button on his wrist, and a hologram of Earth appeared above him. A small planet, blue and green, fragile. I give humanity 72 hours to surrender all their colonies beyond their home system. If they refuse, we will burn their worlds. We will take their children as slaves. We will erase them from history. Makros smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This is not a war. This is an execution. The council watched in silence. No one spoke against the Valori. No one ever did. No one. No one. No one ever did. Far away, on Earth, Admiral Tejo Park watched the broadcast on a screen. He stood in a dark room, surrounded by military leaders from every nation. The room was cold. The air was heavy with tension. The broadcast ended. Makros's face disappeared. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a general from Europe cleared his throat. Perhaps we should negotiate. We cannot win against... No. Tejo's voice was quiet but firm. He did not raise it. He did not need to. The general fell silent. Tejo turned to face the room. He was not a large man. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face showed the lines of many hard years. But his eyes were steady. They had seen death. They had seen worse. They think we are weak, Tejo said. They have watched our broadcasts. They have seen our movies, our songs, our art. They think humans are soft creatures who cry at sad stories and dream of peace. He walked slowly to the center of the room. But they did not study our history. He pressed a button, and images appeared on every screen. Stalingrad, bodies frozen in snow, soldiers eating rats to survive, fighting building by building, room by room, for months that turned into years. Verdun. Men drowning in mud and blood, refusing to retreat. The beaches of Normandy, boys running into gunfire, stepping over their dead friends, still running. They do not know, Tejo continued, that we are the species that hunted mammoths with wooden spears, that we walked across frozen continents, that we survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that killed millions. They do not know that we never stop. We never give up. We never forget. The room was silent. Every eye was on him. They want a war? Tejo's voice was still soft, almost gentle. Then we will give them a war they will remember for 10,000 years. The vote was unanimous. Earth would fight. On the Valori homeworld, Scholar Olis rushed through the marble halls of the War Ministry. His robes flowed behind him. His hands shook as he clutched a data tablet to his chest. He burst into Warlord Tyvan's chamber without permission. Tyvan looked up from his maps, annoyed. He was a massive Valori, covered in battle scars. He had never lost a war. What is this? Tyvan demanded. My lord. Please. Olis held out the tablet. You must see this. I have studied the humans, their history, their nature. We are making a terrible mistake. Tyvan took the tablet with a sneer. He scrolled through the images. Battles, explosions, cities in ruins. He laughed. You show me pictures of primitives killing each other with metal tubes? This is supposed to frighten me? They fought these wars against themselves, Olus said desperately. Imagine what they will do to an enemy they truly hate. They have a word, my lord. Genocide. They invented it. They nearly did it to their own kind. Multiple times. Tyvan tossed the tablet back. They are soft. They make art about love. They make art about love. They also make art about war, about revenge, about hunting their enemies to the ends of their world. Olus's voice cracked. They are persistence predators, my lord, on their planet. They hunted animals not by being faster or stronger, but by following them. For days, for weeks, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They never stopped. They never gave up. Tyvan waved his hand dismissively. Enough. The High Lord has decided. We will crush them. In days. Olus left the chamber with a heavy heart. He knew what was coming. He had seen it in the data, in the blood-soaked history of the small blue planet. The humans did not respond for 72 hours. The galaxy waited. The Valori laughed at their silence, calling it cowardice. Then, exactly as the deadline passed, Earth sent one transmission. It contained no words, no threats, no pleas for mercy. It was simply a file. Millions of pages. Every war humanity had ever fought. Every battle. Every siege. Every last stand where humans died rather than surrender. The file ended with a single set of coordinates. The location of the Valori's nearest military outpost. Admiral Tejo Park sat in his command chair, watching the transmission leave Earth. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply said, "Begin," and across the solar system, hidden bases that no one knew existed began to wake up. Ships that had been built in secret for 80 years, powered on their engines. Millions of humans who had trained in silence put on their uniforms. The hunt was about to begin. Deep inside an asteroid, 3 billion kilometers from Earth, red lights began to flash. Machines that had slept for decades hummed to life. Dust fell from metal walls as doors opened for the first time in 50 years. Admiral Tejo Park walked through the massive hangar, his boots echoing on steel floors. Around him, ships rose from their cradles. Hundreds of them. Then, thousands. Warships built in secret. Hidden from the galaxy's eyes, Captain Yuna Bake walked beside him. She was small, with short black hair and cold eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. The soldiers called her the Ghost. She had earned that name in ways she never talked about. They really had no idea, Yuna said. Looking at the fleet awakening around them, Tejo shook his head. The galaxy thought we trusted them. They thought we believed in peace. He watched a massive carrier rise from its dock, its hull black as space itself. We have never trusted anyone. Not even ourselves. For 80 years, while humanity smiled and traded and made friends with alien species, they had also built, in secret, in silence, mining asteroids, training soldiers, preparing for the day when someone would try to destroy them. That day had come. In a laboratory on the moon, Dr. Hana Kwan worked without sleep. Her screens showed Valori biology in perfect detail. She had studied them for 3 days straight, drinking coffee and eating protein bars, searching for weaknesses, and she had found them. Their nervous system is incredibly sensitive, she told the military council through a video link. Pain, that a human would call uncomfortable, would make a Valori scream. They cannot handle temperature extremes. Anything below freezing or above 40 degrees will slow them down severely. She pulled up another diagram. They need 12 hours of sleep every cycle. Not want. Need. If they don't get it, their minds begin to break down within days. They become confused, paranoid, unable to function. General Kim from the Korean Defense Force leaned forward. And their emotions? Hana paused. They feel fear, but they have not felt it in a long time. For thousands of years, they have been the hunters. They have forgotten what it is like to be prey. On Earth, the streets were quiet. There were no protests, no debates, no politicians arguing on television. When the Valori had threatened to take human children as slaves, something had changed. Recruitment centers opened at midnight. By morning, the lines stretched for kilometers. Old men who had fought in forgotten wars stood next to young women fresh from university. Factory workers stood next to scientists. Rich stood next to poor. Sergeant Woojin Lee was 58 years old. His knees hurt. His back was not what it used to be. He had retired from the military 15 years ago, thinking his fighting days were over. He stood in line at a recruitment center in Busan, wearing his old uniform. It was tight around the middle now, but it still fit. "You're too old," the young officer at the desk said, not unkindly. Woojin placed his service record on the desk. 3 wars. 42 combat missions. The Silver Star. The Cross of Valor. "I was killing enemies before your father was born," Woojin said calmly. "You can find me a place, or I will find one myself." They found him a place. In Seoul, Lieutenant Nario sat in a waiting room, her leg bouncing with nervous energy. She was 23 years old, the youngest pilot to ever qualify for the Advanced Fighter program. She was also, according to her psychological evaluation, emotionally unstable and prone to excessive risk-taking. The evaluation recommended she be grounded. She had burned the evaluation. "Lieutenant O?" A doctor called her name. She walked into the examination room with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I'm ready to fly, doctor." The doctor looked at her file. Then, at her face. He was old enough to recognize the look in her eyes. He had seen it in veterans, in survivors, in people who had decided they were not afraid to die. "So am I," he said, and signed her clearance form. On the other side of the galaxy, a neutral ambassador named Krell visited Earth as a peace envoy. His species, the Manthari, had stayed out of the conflict. He came to encourage humanity to surrender, to save themselves from destruction. What he saw changed him. He watched humans train in freezing temperatures that would kill a Valori in hours. He watched them run until they collapsed, then get up and run again. He watched them fight hand to hand until blood covered the training mats, then shake hands and laugh together. He visited a military hospital where wounded soldiers waited to return to duty. Not because they were forced to, because they wanted to. He spoke to a young woman whose brother had died in the first Valori attack on a border colony. He expected tears. He expected grief. She looked at him with dry eyes and said, "I'm joining the fleet tomorrow. I'm going to make them pay for every drop of his blood." Krell left Earth 3 days later. His report to the Galactic Council was short. "Do not help the Valori," he wrote. "Do not even trade with them. The humans are coming, and they are not coming to negotiate. I have seen their training camps. I have seen their soldiers. I have looked into their eyes. They do not fear death. They have songs about dying gloriously. We have made a terrible mistake." The council read his report in silence. Some dismissed it. Others felt the first cold touch of doubt. 2 weeks after the declaration of war, the Valori First Strike Fleet entered human space. 200 warships, the pride of the Dominion. Warlord Tyvan commanded them personally. He expected to find scattered resistance, frightened colonists, a few old ships trying to fight. Instead, he found Admiral Tejo Park waiting for him. The human fleet hung in space like a wall of black metal. Ships that should not exist, weapons that should not have been built. And at their center, Tejo's flagship, the Eternal Defiance. Tyvan stared at his screen, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Where did they? How did they? A communication request appeared. Tyvan accepted it. Admiral Tejo's face filled the screen. He looked calm, almost bored. "You wanted a war," Tejo said. The first battle of the Human-Valori War was about to begin. The Battle of Proxima lasted 6 hours. It changed everything. Warlord Tyvan commanded 200 Valori warships. Admiral Tejo had only 80. By every calculation, by every rule of warfare the galaxy had known for millennia, the humans should have retreated. They should have run. They did not run. All ships, forward, Tejo ordered. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Close the distance. The Valori ships opened fire from maximum range, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness of space. Human ships took hit after hit. Metal burned. Hulls cracked. Atmosphere leaked into the void. And still, the humans kept coming. Tyvan watched his tactical display with growing confusion. Why are they not retreating? They have lost 12 ships already. His officers had no answer. The human fleet did not fight like any enemy the Valori had faced before. They did not try to preserve their ships. They did not fall back when damaged. Instead, they pushed forward, absorbing fire, getting closer and closer. Lieutenant Nari O flew her fighter at the front of the formation. Her squadron of 12 had already lost 4 pilots. Warning lights flashed across her cockpit. Her shields were failing. Her left engine was damaged. She kept flying. Ghost Squadron, this is... Oh, she said into her radio. I see an opening in their carrier's hangar. Follow me in. That's suicide, her wingman shouted. Nari smiled. It was not a nice smile. Maybe. She pushed her throttle forward and dove toward the massive Valori carrier. Defense guns tried to track her, but she was too fast, too unpredictable. She twisted and spun through the fire like a leaf in a storm. Behind her, 3 other pilots followed. They knew they would probably die. They followed anyway. Nari's fighter screamed through the carrier's hangar entrance. She saw Valori soldiers diving for cover, their purple faces twisted with shock. She armed her remaining missiles. For Earth, she whispered, and fired. The explosion tore through the carrier's core. Secondary explosions followed as ammunition and fuel caught fire. The massive ship, home to 5,000 Valori soldiers, began to break apart. Nari ejected at the last moment. Her cockpit seat rocketed through the flames and into space. She watched the carrier die around her, her face lit by the fire. She was recovered 2 hours later, burned and half frozen. She was flying again within a week. By the end of the Battle of Proxima, the Valori had lost 140 ships. The humans had lost 60. Any other species would have called 60 ships a devastating defeat. The humans called it a victory. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. For the first time in 400 years, the Valori had been beaten. The story of the pilot, who flew into a carrier and survived, became legend. Other species began to whisper a question they had never asked before. What are the humans? But the space battle was only the beginning. On Colony 7, a small human world near the border, the real horror was about to start. Valori troops landed expecting easy conquest. 10,000 soldiers in heavy armor, with tanks and aircraft and weapons that could level cities. The colony had only 300,000 civilians and a small defense force. Sergeant Woojin Lee commanded that defense force. We cannot win a straight fight, Woojin told his soldiers. They had gathered in an underground bunker, their faces young and frightened. So we will not fight straight. We will fight dirty. We will fight in ways they cannot imagine. We will make them pay for every meter of ground in blood. The Valori marched into the main city expecting surrender. They found empty streets, silent buildings, no one. Then, as night fell, the attacks began. The Valori had poor night vision. The humans knew this. Woojin's soldiers struck in the darkness, appearing from shadows, killing sentries, then vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. They set traps in buildings. They poisoned water supplies. They filled the night with sounds, human war drums, screaming, hunting calls from Earth's ancient past. The Valori could not sleep. Day after day, night after night, the attacks continued. The Valori tried to establish secure positions, but nowhere was safe. A soldier would turn a corner and find a human waiting with a knife. A patrol would enter a building and trigger an explosion that brought the whole structure down. After 2 weeks, the Valori commander requested reinforcements. After 3 weeks, his soldiers were shooting at shadows. After 4 weeks, he surrendered to Sergeant Woojin Lee. Woojin had lost 112 soldiers. The Valori had lost 8,000. The survivors were taken prisoner. Woojin treated them well. He gave them food and medical care. He let them sleep. "Why?" one Valori officer asked him. "We came to enslave your people. We would have shown no mercy." Woojin looked at him with tired eyes. "Because we are not you. We can be monsters when we need to be. But we do not have to be monsters all the time. That is the difference between us." Word of colony. 7 spread through the Valori military. Soldiers began to refuse deployment to human fronts. Fear, an emotion they had almost forgotten, crept into their hearts. On the Valori homeworld, Scholar Olis watched the reports come in. Battle after battle, defeat after defeat. Humans who kept attacking when they should have been dead. Humans who smiled as they died, as long as they took enemies with them. He had tried to warn them. No one had listened. Now, he sought an audience with High Lord Macros. Macros sat on his throne, surrounded by advisors who told him what he wanted to hear. When Olis entered, the High Lord's face twisted with annoyance. "You again? Come to tell me more stories about the scary humans?" "My lord," Olis said, keeping his voice steady. "We have lost 47 ships and 12,000 ground troops in 4 weeks. We have not lost this many soldiers in a century. Please, we must negotiate. We must negotiate?" Macros stood, his voice rising. "With animals? With primitives? Never. They are not primitives." Olis shouted, his control finally breaking. "They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They do not fight to survive. My lord, they fight because they enjoy it. They call war an art form. They have turned killing into a science and dying into a glory." The room fell silent. No one spoke to the High Lord this way. Macros walked slowly down from his throne. He stood in front of Olis, his 4 eyes burning with anger. "You are a coward," he said softly, "and cowards have no place in my empire." Guards seized Olis and dragged him away. In his cell, waiting for execution, Olis wrote one final message. He sent it to every broadcast channel he could reach before they cut his access. "People of the Dominion," he wrote, "we have awakened something ancient, something that hunted predators into extinction on their own world, something that cannot be stopped, cannot be broken, cannot be frightened. We thought we were the masters of war. We were wrong. The humans are coming, and they are just getting started." His message spread across the galaxy before the Valori could stop it. The war was only beginning. And already, the hunters had become the hunted. 6 months into the war, Admiral Tejo Park gathered his commanders on the flagship Eternal Defiance. They floated in orbit around a Valori world they had just captured. Fires still burned on the surface below. "We have defended long enough," Tejo said. His voice was soft, but every officer listened with complete attention. "Now, we hunt." He pulled up a map of Valori space. 300 star systems, billions of soldiers, an empire that had stood for 10,000 years. "We do not need to conquer every world," Tejo continued. "We do not need to kill every soldier. We need to do something worse." He paused. "We need to make them afraid of the dark." Captain Yuna Beck stood in the corner, her arms crossed. She had not slept in 3 days. She did not need to. Sleep was a luxury. Sleep was for people who were not at war. "Division 0 is ready," she said. "Give us targets." Tejo smiled. It was not a warm smile. You will have plenty. The next phase of the war was not like anything the galaxy had seen before. The humans did not advance in neat lines. They did not conquer systems one by one. Instead, they appeared without warning, struck hard, and vanished before the Valori could respond. A supply depot would explode in the middle of the night. A command center would go silent, its staff found dead at their stations. Ships would disappear in regions of space that should have been safe. The Valori military began to crack. Soldiers who had never known fear started jumping at shadows. Officers refused to travel without massive escorts. Rumors spread of human soldiers who could not be killed, who kept fighting even with mortal wounds, who smiled as they died. Dr. Hana Kwan had developed a new weapon. Not a bomb, not a gun, something worse. It was a gas. Invisible and odorless. It did not kill. It was not even painful. It simply caused nightmares. Any Valori who breathed it would dream of humans hunting them. Every night. Forever. The first deployment was on a Valori military base. Within a week, half the soldiers had gone mad. The others surrendered just to escape the dreams. Across the galaxy, species that had watched the war with distant interest began to pay closer attention. The Manthari ambassador who had visited Earth sent daily reports to his government. His message was always the same. Do not get involved. Let the Valori fall. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions. Some members wanted to intervene, to stop the humans before they became too powerful. Others remembered Scholar Olus's message. They remembered what the humans had done to their own kind throughout history. They chose to do nothing. It was safer that way. Captain Yuna Bake's greatest mission began on a cold morning in deep space. Her target was Warlord Tyvan himself. The architect of the Valori war strategy, intelligence had located his command ship in a fortified system, surrounded by 200 warships. It's impossible, her tactical officer said, looking at the data. We can't get through that defense. Yuna studied the hologram of the enemy formation. She was quiet for a long time. We don't go through, she finally said. We go around, and we take our time. The mission lasted 3 months. Yuna's team traveled in a damaged cargo ship, disguised as refugees. They passed through 6 security checkpoints, each time using different identities, different stories. They survived on half rations. They slept in shifts. They did not complain. When they finally reached Tyvan's command ship, they had been awake for 48 hours straight. Their ammunition was low. Their bodies were exhausted. They attacked anyway. Yuna moved through the ship like smoke. She killed guards before they could raise alarms. She reached Tyvan's quarters at midnight, when the warlord was supposed to be sleeping. He was not sleeping. He was sitting at his desk, staring at reports of human victories. His 4 eyes were red with exhaustion. He looked up when Yuna entered. He did not seem surprised. I knew one of you would come eventually, he said. Yuna raised her weapon. A lot of things are possible for humans. How? Tyvan asked. How did you get through our defenses? Our checkpoints? Our security? Yuna considered the question. We don't stop, she said simply. You can slow us down. You can hurt us. You can kill us. But if even one of us survives, we keep coming. That's what your people never understood. We're not soldiers. We're hunters. And hunters don't give up. Tyvan closed his eyes. Then finish it. The news of Warlord Tyvan's death spread across the galaxy within hours. The greatest military mind of the Valori Dominion, killed in his own command ship, surrounded by 200 warships. No one knew how. No one knew who. But everyone knew it was human. On the Valori homeworld, High Lord Macros received the news in silence. His advisors waited for his response. For orders. For leadership. Macros said nothing. He simply stared at the wall. The empire he had ruled for 200 years was falling apart. His soldiers were deserting. His generals were dying. His people were beginning to whisper that maybe, just maybe, Scholar Olus had been right. Maybe they had awakened something they could not stop. The final phase of the war began when human ships entered the Valori home system. Not an invasion fleet, not yet. Just scouts. Watching. Waiting. Admiral Tejo sent one message to the Valori homeworld. It was short. You declared war 14 months ago. We are here to accept your surrender. You have 72 hours. The same time you gave us. On the bridge of the Eternal Defiance, Tejo sat in his command chair and watched the Valori homeworld grow larger on his screen. 4 billion people lived there. 4 billion lives that he could end with a single order. He did not give that order. Not yet. Instead, he waited. He wanted them to understand. He wanted them to feel what humanity had felt when Makros had threatened to burn their worlds and enslave their children. He wanted them to know fear. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving transmissions from the surface, civilian broadcasts. They're begging for mercy. Tejo nodded slowly. Let them beg. Let them wait. Let them understand what they started. Outside, the human fleet hung in the darkness like patient predators, waiting for the hunt to end. The human fleet surrounded Valora Prime like a ring of silent death. 1,000 warships. Enough firepower to turn the planet into ash. 4 billion Valori looked up at the sky and waited to die. Admiral Tejo Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Defiance, watching the planet turn slowly below. Cities glittered on the night side. Oceans sparkled in the sunlight. It was a beautiful world. It could be a dead world within hours. Sir, Captain Yuna Beck said quietly, standing beside him. The fleet commanders are asking for orders. They want to begin the bombardment. Tejo did not answer immediately. He thought about the war. 14 months of fighting. Millions of dead on both sides. Friends he had lost. Soldiers who would never go home. The cost had been terrible, but the price of revenge would be worse. No bombardment, he said finally. We wait. Yuna frowned. Sir, they threatened to enslave our children. They killed thousands of our people. They deserve nothing, Tejo interrupted. His voice was soft but firm. This is not about what they deserve. This is about who we are. We can destroy them. The question is whether we should. For 72 hours, the human fleet waited. The same 72 hours the Valori had given humanity at the start of the war. It was intentional. Tejo wanted them to understand. On the surface, panic had given way to a strange calm. People gathered in temples to pray. Families held each other. Soldiers who had once dreamed of conquering the galaxy now simply hoped to see one more sunrise. High Lord Makros sat alone in his palace. His advisors had fled. His guards had deserted. His empire had crumbled around him, like sand in a storm. When his communications screen lit up with an incoming message from the human fleet, he almost did not answer. But he did. There was nothing else left to do. Admiral Tejo's face appeared on the screen. The human looked tired, old. His gray hair was thinner than it had been at the start of the war. His eyes held a weight that had not been there before. High Lord Makros, Tejo said. I am calling to discuss terms of surrender. Makros laughed bitterly. Terms? What terms? You will take everything. Our worlds, our resources, our people. That is how war works. That is how we would have treated you. Tejo shook his head slowly. No. That is how you would have treated us. We are not you. He leaned forward slightly. Our terms are simple. You will surrender unconditionally. Your military commanders will stand trial for war crimes. You will pay reparations for the damage you caused. Makros waited for the rest. The demands for territory, the enslavement of his people, the destruction of his civilization. Tejo continued. That is all. Makros stared at the screen, unable to process what he was hearing. That is all? No occupation? No revenge? You have the power to destroy us. Why would you not use it? Tejo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of exhaustion and wisdom. Because we could, and we chose not to. That is the message I want to send to the galaxy. That is what I want you to remember, forever. Humans can be the most terrifying force in the universe when we need to be, but we do not have to be. We choose. He paused. You will rebuild. You will recover. And every time you look at the sky, you will remember that we could have ended you. We could have burned your world and scattered your ashes across the void. But we did not. That mercy is our power. That mercy is our warning. Do not make us choose again. The surrender was signed the next day. High Lord Macros walked out of his palace in chains, surrounded by human soldiers. The galaxy watched as the greatest empire it had ever known fell not with a final explosion, but with a signature on a document. The war was over. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Species that had feared humanity now feared them even more, but it was a different kind of fear. Not fear of destruction. Fear of the unknown. What kind of species could do what the humans had done, and then stop? Captain Una Bake was assigned to peacekeeping duty on a former Valori colony. She hated it. She missed the simplicity of combat, the clarity of enemies and allies. But she did her duty. She always did. One day, a Valori child approached her in the street. The little one could not have been more than 6 years old, her purple skin pale with nervousness. "Are you going to hurt us?" the child asked. Una knelt down to meet her eyes. For a long moment, she did not speak. She thought about all the Valori soldiers she had killed, all the blood on her hands, all the nightmares she would carry forever. "No," she said finally. "We're done hurting. Now we help." She did not know if she believed it. But she wanted to. Sergeant Woojin Lee retired to a small farm on Colony 7, the world he had defended. He grew vegetables and raised chickens and tried not to think about the war. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit on his porch and look up at the stars. He never spoke about what he had done. He never wore his medals. When children asked him if he was a hero, he would shake his head and say, "I was just a soldier. Heroes don't come home." Lieutenant Nari O became an instructor at the academy. She taught young pilots from a dozen species, including Valori. Her methods were harsh. Her standards were impossible. Her students either broke or became the best pilots in the fleet. When asked why she was so hard on them, she would smile her sharp smile and say, "Because someday, they might have to fly into a carrier and survive. Better they learn to be impossible here than die being ordinary out there." Dr. Hana Kwan established the first joint human Valori medical institute. She spent her days healing the enemies she had once created weapons to destroy. She never apologized for the nightmare gas. She never said she was wrong. "War is not about being good," she would tell her students. "It is about winning. The time to be good is after the victory." Admiral Tejo Park retired to Earth. He bought a small house near the ocean and spent his days fishing and reading old books. Journalists came sometimes, asking for interviews, asking how he felt about the war, asking what message he wanted to send to history. He always refused. But one day, a young reporter was more persistent than the others. She sat outside his house for 3 days, waiting. Finally, he invited her in. "One question," he said. "That's all you get." The reporter thought carefully. Then she asked, "What do you want humanity's message to the galaxy to be?" 2. Tejo looked out the window at the ocean. Waves crashed against rocks that had stood for millions of years. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Don't start what you can't finish." Far across the galaxy, scholar Olis's final testament was studied in universities and military academies. His words became famous, quoted by philosophers and generals alike. The humans did not win because they were the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. They won because, when we told them to surrender, They laughed. When we killed them, they mourned their dead and kept fighting. When they could have destroyed us, they rebuilt us instead. The most terrifying thing about humans is not their capacity for war. It is their capacity to stop. The galaxy never forgot the lesson. Never again did any species threaten humanity's children. Never again did anyone assume that the small blue planet was weak because its people made art about love. And in the darkness of space, around 1,000,000 campfires on 1,000,000 worlds, stories were told about the strange species from Earth. The species that never gave up. The species that could be terrifying and merciful in equal measure. The species that won a war and then chose peace. That, in the end, was the most frightening thing of all.